Shit is real, got me feeling Israelian, like Bar Raphael Giselle. No, that's Brazilian. Went through deep depression when my mama passed.
Assalamu alaikum, it's me Yaqub. It's Yaqub Speaks, volume a trillion. Don't really know anymore. Want to talk about some myths about Islam. Talk about them real fast because usually I waste a lot of time. Let's get down to it. First one, Islamophobia is in itself a myth. How can this be true when the word phobia is an irrational fear and Islam is an intangible thing? You cannot touch Islam. So, is it rational to be afraid of something that you cannot touch? I don't mean to sound condescending, but if you had aerophobia, would that be logical? Could you touch air? People believe in a certain thing. That's their business, and whether or not you want to subscribe to the fact that Islam represents peace is your business. But something that cannot be touched cannot possibly harm you. Granted, Islam is an idea, and it can go into people's brains, just like Christianity, just like Judaism. It's an idea, and it can inspire people. Ideas can be good or bad, and they can control what people do, and people's actions can certainly harm you. But can an idea or a thought or a sentence, can that harm you? It cannot be touched, and it cannot touch. It is irrational. Talking about Islamophobia is a myth, and it's made by people who feel sorry for Muslims and who hate America. And if you don't hate Muslims, then you must hate America, because those two things go hand in hand. That makes no sense. Islam existed 1,000 years or more before the United States existed, when England's empire was quite small and not many people even spoke English quite yet. Islam is very old, and it transcends politics. To be afraid of something that does not speak on politics, to be afraid of something that cannot be touched. Again, I don't mean to beat this point like a dead horse, but they say that there's no such thing as Islamophobia, phobia being an irrational fear, Islam being Islam, the submission to the will of God. It's quite irrational, it's quite a phobia, and it does exist. Homophobia, just to solidify my point as I usually like to do, homophobia is the irrational fear of homosexuals. People kill themselves all the time. 12-year-olds, 11-year-olds, 14-year-olds, college freshmen, people who usually wouldn't do such a thing if they weren't bullied to the point of jumping off of a bridge. Is that a myth? Is it because homosexuality goes against Leviticus, whatever? I don't know. But people bully them and they don't let them do them. And they end up killing themselves. It's an irrational fear. The idea that it is okay to be gay, that idea scares people. That idea cannot possibly harm you. If somebody is gay, then they're gay. If you want to believe that they're going to burn in hell or corrupt things or whatever, if you want to still believe that, you can believe it, but they will not harm you. Them doing that cannot inflict pain or harm on your body, your anything other than possibly you may think your society. But again, that cannot be touched. Society is just a thing. It's just another idea. What is that? These are all intangible terms. None of this can be touched. Therefore, the fear is irrational. Okay? Don't hate people. Don't be afraid of people. Okay? Don't say Islamophobia is a myth. Don't say homophobia is a myth. And don't go back to 1950 and 1940 and say that Japanophobia, which was not a term back then because nobody really had sympathy for them, and they put them all in camps. But don't go back then and say Japanophobia is a myth. Alright? Jeez. Alright, I got another couple that I want to talk about. I'm going to flip back to got a couple things written down here. Quickly. Allah is a character of some kind, a composite sketch from like a police artist or something like that. And it's just like the best of all qualities of all the religions that were prevalent on the Silk Road, which Mohamad he saw the the terrible state of his hometown, Mecca, and that he wanted to unite everybody. So he picked and chose all the best traits from Hindu, from Buddhist, from Taoism, and Shinto, and Christianity, and Judaism, and he just swirled them all together, and he made like a guy, and his guy was like the coolest guy ever, and his name was going to be Allah, and then he was going to be like, oh yeah, we like Jesus, but he's not that great, and and everybody should pray to me. That is the exact opposite of Islam. I'm going to break it down for you. I like to do this. Arabic and English, not the same thing. Allah is Arabic. So a lot of times people interchange English and Arabic when they're talking about Islam. That's just like talking in Spanglish. It really is. It's as if you're talking in Spanglish all the time. So if you're going to say Allah, in the back of your mind, say the God. That's all that word means. The Christian Bible has Allah in it. The Jewish Torah, when translated into Arabic, would say Allah in it. Jehovah's Witness in Arabic, Allah. Okay? It's a word. It means the God. Any monotheistic religion descending from Abraham will say Allah. That's how it is. Allah is a unique word in Arabic. It can never be made feminine, and it can never be made plural. And it embodies the one God of the Abrahamic monotheistic religions. It's not a character, okay? It's the same. It's a word. It's an Arabic word. It's just not English. Another one, I've made other videos and I've ranted, wasting so much time talking about this one. I want to keep this one shorter than an hour and a half because my other videos were quite long. This one is that the Taliban is a synonym for Islam, and or that Muslims are Taliban sympathizers by nature. And finally, that Islam has any predisposed stance on the United States and Western society. False, 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 false. Okay, why? False, first of all. Taliban did not exist until the 1970s or 80s. Number 2, Taliban was called freedom fighters in the 1980s. 3, Taliban means student of Islam. The group, capital T, Taliban, is a bunch of jerks who I personally hate, and most of all of Islam does not consider their actions at all to be Muslims. And would they be considered practicing Muslims? Though they would identify themselves as such, they are not embodying any of the characteristics of Islam of a Muslim. Here's an example. The 1963 16th Street church bombing in Birmingham, Alabama, where little girls died, was done in the name of Christianity. But it was because it was a black church, and the desegregation of communities and the removal of Jim Crow laws was threatening American Christian society. So it was okay to harm little children in the name of God. Is that Christianity as anyone knows it? Absolutely not. Timothy McVeigh, a self-identified Christian, bombed the Oklahoma City buildings in the 90s. Was that Christian in any way, shape, or form? Slavery. The slavery of black people from Africa. Both the slave trade and the actual idea of having slavery, by the way, illegal in Islam, was okay because black people were not human beings, and the Bible in colonial America was used to prove this. The Bible, of course, does not agree with this in the modern day world. Back then, it still didn't say that, but they manipulated words to get away with such racist things, such oppressive things. I'm sure everyone's heard of the white man's burden, the ethnocentric text, and the idea that it was the white man's responsibility to help savages like colored people, get cultured and get civilized. And you can only civilize them so much, and it would be a favor of you to take them in and let them be your slave so that they could taste a drop of civilization. Catholic priests molesting kids, and the Pope, the head of Catholicism, not punishing them under canon law, only removing them from their post and placing them somewhere else, and in many cases not debatable. defending them and covering up these incidents. This is not a slam on Catholicism. These are facts. Is that action Catholic? Is that action of child molestation Christian in any way, shape, or form? Absolutely not. A bunch of quacks doing crazy stuff does not speak for the whole religion. So, is the Taliban a representation of Islam? No, they are people who call themselves Muslims doing a bunch of crazy stuff. They don't represent Muslims and they don't represent Islam. Done with that. The next one is that Muslims pray to Mohamad. That's outrageous. That's just don't even give me that, because that's just outrageous. The another one is that the Mohamad is the Jesus of Islam. Jesus is the Jesus of Islam. Muslims love Jesus. Jesus is talked about more than any other person in the entire Quran. When Mohamad had stumbled upon a statue of Jesus and of the Virgin Mary and a bunch of other statues of other deities that people prayed to, pigs and sheeps and Shivas and Ganeshas, Vishnus and all that stuff, he smashed them all. He smashed them viciously, broke them all. But he didn't break Jesus and he didn't break the Virgin Mary. He put a sheet over them and turned them away so that no one could pray to them. But he said, respect this. He had the utmost respect for Jesus, and he made sure that all of his followers, whenever they say Jesus, they also follow it with peace be upon him. So no, they don't equate Muhammad to the Jesus of Islam, and they absolutely do not pray to Muhammad. He was so against being worshipped in any way, shape, or form that he did not allow for any images of him to be painted, and that is why people sometimes get a little upset when that happens, because they don't want Islam to be distorted into a religion where a man, albeit a special man perhaps, but a man nonetheless, should be worshipped. That is the antithesis of Islam, and it is against the main tenets altogether. Muslims do not pray to Muhammad. They do not pray to any living thing. And Jesus is the Jesus of Islam. I think I talked for quite long enough. That I have a couple more myths that I can put into a different video. Just to recap, Islamophobia is not a myth. Taliban and Islam are not synonyms. Muslims don't pray to Muhammad, and Jesus is the Jesus of Islam. Alright, y'all. Take it easy.